I played a little bit of Diablo 4. Now, I will not pretend to be like an expert in Diablo anything. I really don't know much of anything about Diablo as a franchise. I've never really been into the games. When Diablo 3 came out, when did Diablo 3 come out? Diablo, wasn't it like 2014 maybe? 2012. Oh, even earlier than that. So 2012, I was still in high school. At the time I was still going to chess tournaments. That was my hobby. So I've never been into Diablo, even though it seems relatively interesting. So I tried Diablo 4, the open, closed beta, whatever. And I had a pretty good time with it. I'll be real. I had fun. It's not my normal kind of game, which is why I was kind of surprised. But especially on my like big ultra wide now, being able to just play it, have the other screen with like a show going or a movie or something, a documentary, just kind of chill out, was actually like really, really fun. I had a really good time. And a lot of other creators have also played it. Now, I want to look at two. And I'll offer my thoughts kind of interspersed as we go through them, because I think they're going to offer some contrasting opinions. The first one we'll look at is Maddie's time with it. The second one we're going to look at is Asmongold's impressions of Diablo 4. Maddie is much more of a JRPG fan, not like a hardcore ARPG player, but still pretty hardcore in RPGs. And then Asmongold, as we all know, is the King Emperor of the ARPG clan. So he's kind of the ultimate authority on this stuff. So it's going to be really, really interesting. A weeb, in other words. Yeah, kind of nice and long. Amu. So it's going to be interesting to hear this. And then I'm coming at this, to be clear, from the perspective of somebody that doesn't really play either of those very much at all. Like, I play narrative RPGs a lot. I don't really play JRPGs much. I'll play the occasional one and I'll enjoy it, but I would not consider myself like a JRPG fan, fanboy, if that makes sense. And then as for ARPGs, I like action RPGs, but games that require like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 hours to get your feet on the ground are just too big for me to tackle usually. So that's a lot of it. So we're going to see what this is like and hear their thoughts. I'm intrigued. Also, I've not looked at this. I'm intrigued because it seems like there's apparently Maddie says something controversial in this. So I want to hear what he's saying that's triggering some people. This is interesting to me. Let's see.
Salutations, everybody. It is Maddie here today, sitting down to talk about Diablo 4. This game has quietly been one of my most anticipated games of 2023. A big thank you to Activision Blizzard for providing the early code for the beta. And for those of you who have pre-ordered the game, you can get into the open beta this week.
I had to pay for it. What is this shit? I had to pay for it. This is part of the problem, man. YouTubers think they have it so sweet they could just get whatever they want. Send an email, get the game for free. It's ridiculous, man. It's ridiculous. For real talk, though, I need to get connections within them. But all of these Xbox adjacent companies, and I know Activision's not technically yet an Xbox company, but all of these Xbox adjacent companies, I can't really get a hold of. It's weird. It's why it's so funny when people call me an Xbot. I'm like, no, they're not a big fan of me either, because I tease them a lot. Pay for the beta. Well, it was I think it's a pre-order bonus for the main, like for the game. So I think that's how I did it. I pre-ordered the game, and yeah, because I have to play the game anyways, and they're not going to send me a review code. So plus, this isn't really the kind of game that you do a review for. Like, it's a multiple 1,000-hour game. It's not really one that, yeah, I got the review code 3 days before launch. Here's my review. Like, it doesn't really work that like.
I was really excited to dive into this because I grew up on action RPGs that were all about loot, such as Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 1 and 2 on PlayStation 2, as well as Champions Return to Arms. These games are still in my collection. I still love them with all my heart. And fun fact, you can actually play Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance 1 and 2 on modern consoles right now if you wish. But that aside, I grew up on these type of games, and I was late to the Diablo party. I know many people celebrate Diablo 2, and to a different extent Diablo 3, but for me, I started off my Diablo adventure with 3, and I loved it. I think the game flow for the type of action action RPG it is downright perfect. And I love the replayability of it. I've had so much fun with it. And like many out there, sank a ton of hours into it. So with that in mind, having such a, in my opinion, great formula and the mastery of it right there, how do you improve upon that heading into Diablo 4? Well, I wanted to at least dip my toes in, even though I want to go in as blind as humanly possible, but I just had to see. I had to satisfy my curiosity. So join me as we talk a bit about my time with Diablo 4, and hopefully you kill a couple minutes off that queue clock you're probably waiting for.
Everybody was warning me about the queue timer. I sat for 3.5 minutes and then I was in. Like on the first day. Like I really did not have trouble with it. I guess I lucked out.
Diablo 4, because my word, I had to wait 2 hours to get in. That was pretty intense. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're new here and you're into game reviews, previews, that type of stuff, consider subscribing. We will have our Redfall preview out very shortly, so keep your eyes peeled. And with that, let's begin with the opening of the game, which really surprised me because one way they've elevated Diablo 4 is its presentation. I was extremely impressed with the focus on narrative here. Now, it's still your top-down camera perspective, but it's not afraid to bring it in, and it's not afraid to do so because the game is low-key a looker. It's actually a very pretty world, and the character models look sharp. There's tons of detail in the environment. This was not something I personally expected. Like many of you out there, I play Diablo because of the loot. I play Diablo because it feels fun, it's satisfying, it's responsive, it's just an enjoyable romp. I don't need a good narrative here, although it is appreciated, and that's one of the areas that I've noticed Diablo 4 is starting to elevate in. That's why I'm able to get my beta impressions out probably quicker than some, because I gotta be honest with y'all, I played this for 2 hours and went, this is incredible. I'm really liking where everything's heading here. I don't need to ruin more for myself by maxing out level 25, all the characters available, and doing the veteran stuff. I just want to go in as blind as possible. Consider me sold. But this was one of those points where I was super impressed with the game. The presentation.
It's funny, Asmongold, I watched the first like 5 minutes of his video, and Asmongold casually mentions, yeah, so I've max leveled 2 different characters with all legendary armor and equipment at like a very different approach than Maddie.
The cutscenes, the darkness of the universe, and who Lilith is. All this stuff intrigued me very early on, and I didn't expect that at all. I know there are folks out there who are really into the lore of Diablo. I can't consider myself one of them, but moving into Diablo 4, oh, I'm interested. I am super interested where this narrative is going. And if you play the beta and you see some of those cutscenes, you'll learn for yourself. But I don't want to spoil them for you if you haven't, because it truly did grab hold of me. And I was surprised by that, because when I go into a preview period, whether it's what I did for Redfall or what I did here for Diablo 4, I do try to establish some sense of narrative disconnect, because I don't want to invest myself so much in something that I know is temporary and I won't be able to complete. I think it leads to a more disjointed final playthrough of the game when I sit down to do my review. So I want to keep things as loosey-goose as possible. And so I don't get too attached to the narrative. But that's how good the presentation was here. I don't want to oversell it to you, but it's just something that caught me off guard. So I'm very excited to see where that goes. Now, what I imagine most of you are going to be asking is, okay, well, that's cool. The story may hit or miss for me. What about the gameplay? The main thing we play Diablo 4. So isn't that kind of a play on words? Anyway, point being, one of the big calling cards for this game is it's set in an open world. And does that really work for this game? Well, it does have to establish a bit of a formula now because it is in an open world. You had open areas in, say, Diablo 3 that you could explore, but in Diablo 4, it gets pretty expansive. And you'll find all various activities, like events that you can partake in the open world itself, where you'll see other players pull up to you and start helping you out with those events. It's in that shared world nature that I think Diablo 4 kind of thrives, because what I typically would say to someone interested in Diablo is, make sure you have a party. But when I'm exploring the world and getting help from other players, it had this cooperative feel that worked really well. And we did see a little bit of that in Diablo Immortal, but I've already shared my thoughts on how I feel about that monetized video game, so I will save it for that video. But point being is, I did like the idea of a shared world in Diablo, and here it feels truly realized. But also, I mentioned that structure to the open world, and there were a couple...
I'm just excited to be able to play a game like this with tons of friends and viewers too. I mean, we'll be able to stream this, and when we do reactions like this, I can have this game running in the background. I think it'll be awesome. Asmon's a hermit. He has the time. Yeah, that's true. Let's see. All Asmongold cares about is the end game grind. That's his entire approach to games. He's one of those MMO ARPG players that is, it really is his bread and butter. And I mean, you think about it, he streams for like 12 to 16 hours a day. He'll take some days off, don't get me wrong, but like he will stream for that long. And other than like 2 hours where he's doing reactions and stuff, he'll be playing the game that whole time. So you think like you're playing a game for 12 hours a day. You're going to grind. You're going to grind. You're going to level up. You're going to do a lot. So it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And even like if you only did that for 1 or 2 streams a week, within 2 weeks, you're at almost 50 hours of gameplay. Within a month, you're at 100. So you do that for a year of streaming, like you're already at 1,200 hours. It's ridiculous. Like you can make ridiculous progress. And so I I can understand why these guys, put these games through the ringer, because these ARPGs, they are potentially committing to playing for years on end. And I mean, you can see it. I mean, they're the ones you want to hear the impressions from, though, because they know these games inside and out. In some cases, they know the games better than the devs, because they're like, oh no, well, the drop rate on this item is actually this rate, and so that actually balances out in this way. It's really, really interesting. Sean, thank you for the 3 months. Ooh, hey man, sent through a PayPal donation. I finally found time to finish Ragnarok, and your critique was tremendous. Well, first of all, I mean, there's like 3 things to thank you for there. Thank you for 3 months. Thank you for the PayPal donation, and thank you for watching the critique as well. that's baller. Thank you so much, Sean. Thank you. And I'm glad you enjoyed the game. It's badass. Have you seen Dungeons and Dragons yet? No. Is it worth watching? I have like 12 movie tickets from the Cinemark movie club thing. I forgot that I had the subscription. I opened the app one day and then they were all there. So I have to spend them and go see movies, but is it worth seeing it? Generally good reviews? Okay. Chris Pine gives me he's a walking uncanny valley to me. I see him and my brain thinks he's a robot. I don't know why. I don't know. And then there was me with 100 hours in the first 2 weeks of Hogwarts Legacy. Yeah. I mean, I could pour in tons more hours into games if we just streamed more games. But what I've learned is that YouTube streaming and games don't mix super well. They because they approach streams to basically just being big videos that happen to be happening live. Streaming video or streaming games doesn't work super well from what I've noticed. It's really weird. Like a robot. Yeah, there's something about him that just doesn't look right to my brain. I don't know why. He gives me the creeps. I'm sure he's a super nice guy, but Chris Pine, he unsettles me.
Activities I noticed. There are areas called cellars that you'll go into. These are mini horde battles, we'll call them, where just enemies are going to throw themselves at you. It's literally one room. You kill them all. It's a cellar complete, and that's it. The more expansive, familiar Diablo formula here are dungeons, and you'll go inside these and be in them for a hot minute. As what is different here is because we're on better technology, you're not going to load in floor 2 of Dark Cavern, floor 3 of Dark Cavern, the abyss of the Dark Cavern. It's all one continuous stretch. And I actually like that a lot because again, what I think Diablo does well is game flow, and this helps elevate that flow. There is no breakup of the action. You're constantly moving towards your objective. There is a loading screen as you go from open world into the dungeon, for example, but it's very quick. In fact, there was one moment I caught myself lacking a bit because I went to go fast travel to a place and I went to do the ultimate gamer sin that I'm really trying to cut out of my habits, which is, I'll pull out my phone and check real quick what's going on with the world. I gotta check my email real fast. I just remembered, okay. And boom, the game loads in so fast. I lowered my phone and said, okay, Diablo 4, you absolutely have my attention now because I can't even break my focus for a moment. That type of stuff, again, really elevates what I think this series does well, which is game flow. And so I was impressed by that. And keep in mind, I played this on Series X. Not that that is a not powerful console, but this isn't something that I typically experience unless I'm on PC with an SSD and things are loaded really quick. That's just how it goes for at least my PC gaming experience. But yeah, the loading times are really lack thereof. It impressed me big time. Now, as you're going through these dungeons, one of my big complaints is it is a kind of waypoint-driven game. Say you set up a side quest you want to track down, you'll see a little blue marker on the map. That works just fine, right? It's guiding you to where you need to go. You can't rotate the camera or anything like that. It's fixed in its overhead. So the game does need waypoints, and it doesn't get intrusive in the UI, so you don't have to worry about that too much. But when I'm in dungeons, I would catch myself sometimes running the wrong way, getting a little lost. I thought the first time it was me. Then it happened a second time where I ended up going the wrong way. And I do wish when you enter these dungeons, they set some type of marker in them because I think you can lose your way. The good thing about having Diablo 3's loading screens is I would get to the stair set and go, okay, this is the end of this. Now we're going from beginning to end once more. I like the better flow. I think I just need to adjust to it. But I'm curious as I bring this up if those of you who are playing have had the same issue. Because for me, with Diablo 4, I personally did bump into this a couple of times where I was going the wrong way and had to reroute and go all the way back. And again, it could have been just me not paying full attention, but I'd like to say after it happened twice that it's not fully on me. So I'm curious what you have to say about that. When it comes to the actual progression of the game, it's Diablo. You're going to kill enemies, they're going to spit out loot, and you're going to keep equipping new stuff constantly. Again, that's one of my favorite parts about Diablo. It just has a good loot loop. It just continues to feed you, but it's not complete vomit all the time out of all your enemies, so you're not pausing every 2 seconds. It's frequent enough to switch things out, but again, this is where the disconnect comes in. I wasn't taking that extra minute to inspect the effects and cross-reference it with what I'm currently equipping. I just wanted to keep moving. And so this game does allow that. The UI is snappy. It's very easy to bring things up, change things out, level up your character. That all works perfectly fine in my opinion and doesn't pull you out of the experience at all. Same.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that it only takes up a slight window, like you can see here. I mean, you pull up the character, you hit C on the keyboard, it pulls up this little window, so you're still in the game. You can still move around in the game while doing this. So it makes it feel like, character swaps or changes to equipment is super, super quick and snappy.
At all. Same thing when you're navigating store menus. Very snappy, very easy, very much in game, if that makes sense. It's not like there's a loading screen or some big presentation. It just snaps up these menus. Everything about the game, if I were to define Diablo 4 in one word, is snappy. The combat is snappy. The loading screens are snappy. The menus are snappy. And that's what this game needs to be. It just needs to be sharp as a tack, right? It just needs to be constantly letting you go from thing to thing to thing with ease. And it does do that well. Even again, down to just shopping, it does that very well. Now, when you're beating up enemies, not only are they spitting out loot, but you're going to get XP from them, and you can go ahead and level up all different abilities. I already am digging the sorcerer quite a bit because I created more of an aggro build. And what I loved about this game already is I felt the ramifications of my build instantly. Right off the get-go, you choose your basic attack, and it's one of multiple basic attacks. So right away I go, okay, this changes exactly how any sorcerer will play. There's firebolts that you can shoot from afar, but then I chose the more electric basic attack, which functions, I'd say, as a shotgun blast. You have more of a cone to hit them with, but you have to get closer. And obviously, since you're a sorcerer, you're a bit more of a glass cannon. So I was doing a mixture of that and distant spells and creating this, again, glass cannon sorcerer that I was really digging. Now, there's 5 classes available in Diablo 4. 2 of them were not available in the beta, so you could play as the barbarian sorcerer and one other being the rogue, but the druid as well as the necromancer were not available in the beta, unfortunately, so we didn't get to try out a lot of the new fun and exciting stuff. I was really curious about the necromancer, so I found that a bit disappointing, but that's the beauty of Diablo. You're not really tied to one character. You can restart the game and have a blast and build up all these separate files, and I could totally see myself getting lost in this game. The open world works well for me right now. It's not too content jammed. It's not too, oh, go check this out, go check this out. Like, it's not there's a dungeon around every corner, but it is a plump game from the outside looking in. But that leveling up is working well for me too. Just everything about the flow and the design is working extremely well, and that is a good sign in these early goings. And the best part is I could have kept going. I put a healthy 2 hours in and said, okay, I really, really want to keep going, because I was already having that just 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes.
He hasn't really said anything controversial, so I'm confused as to what is causing drama. Yeah.
Sean Dara super chatted $67.62.
Thank you,
Gotta
Sean.
go do life and drive to work, but will be listening in the car. I can't Twitch. I might need a walkthrough. $. Do value matters. Ha ha ha.
We can do that. We'll do a crash course. Thank you so much, Sean. Very, very generous. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. And yeah, drive safe. Yeah, but anyway, like, he hasn't really said anything that controversial. Oh, Jesus Christ, Sean. Well, Sean, that was very generous. Thank you, Sean. Poggers to Sean for his PayPal donation. By the way, just to say it in case anybody ever wants to be ridiculous and donate direct. If you don't want YouTube taking a 30% cut through super chats, the link tree in the description allows you, or exclamation point links, allows you to donate direct through PayPal. It's really safe because it's PayPal, and they also take like 3 or 4% instead of 30. So that's what he's referring to when he says PayPal donations. But anyway, never feel obligated. You don't have to do that. We're doing fine. So, but thank you, Sean. Very, very generous. I would guess probably the thing that he said that was controversial is that he only played it for 2 hours. I'm guessing that's what people are triggered about. Necro and Druid are available for next weekend's open beta. There's 2 open betas? I didn't know that. Oh, that's cool. Try to at least get 1 character to level 20 if you want to get a few cosmetic goodies for when D4 releases. Okay. Been having a blast so far. I love the details. Unique skeletons, each enemy when you burn them to death. Creaking tree noise with the wood wraiths. I did the exact same thing. Played for a few hours. This game's going to be huge. I'm guessing the only thing he said that's like kind of potentially problematic are like that he only played for 2 hours, but I don't even consider that to be that dramatic of a statement. Are people really downvoting it because of that? Controversial because he likes it? Oh, is he supposed to not like it? I don't know. Well, let's hear what Asmongold says. I mean, let's see what he says. I don't know. I get the impression that Diablo is one of those franchises. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I get the vibe it's one of those franchises that everybody hates the new release when it comes out, and then after a few years, people love it. You know? It's one of those things. It's like Call of Duty. Every time they release Call of Duty, everybody's like, oh my God, this sucks. And then you wait a few years and people are like, why can't we go back to that? It's like, because you hated that. We didn't do it because you hated it. They're like, well, but that was back then and this is now. And I want it back. So it's just like, okay, well, dude, I don't know. I don't know. Well, let's see. Yeah, it seems a little strong for his non-fan ratio. I don't know why he's getting hate for it. It's an elitist community where Diablo 2 is peak and nothing will compare. It's just nostalgia effect. Oh, for real. Arno, good to see you. Greetings from Brazil. Glad to have you. I It does. ARPGs in general tend to attract, for lack of a better term, tryhards, which is fine. If you want to try hard in a game, that's awesome. I've tried hard in like Monster Hunter, and I really enjoyed Monster Hunter. Loved it. But it does attract a very particular type of person. And we all know the types. The types who are like, they really revel in it, in being in the nitty gritty with the game, you know, and it's the same thing that happened with like Elden Ring, where people were using summons, which are a feature in the game. People are using summons. And then there's people coming in and being like, oh, so you're playing the game on easy mode, basically. It's like, no, I'm playing the game with the stuff that the developers put in the game. What are you talking about, easy mode? No, this is a tool in the game. Like, what? Like, it blows my mind every time. But anyway, it seems like it attracts those types of people who are like, oh, well, I actually played Elden Ring with one hand and with a pine cone shoved halfway up my urethra. And because you didn't do that, you're a chump. I'm like, okay, cool, dude. But like, not everybody wants to do that. Okay? Call me crazy. That doesn't sound fun.
Diablo 4. Everybody's been playing it. Everybody's been talking about it. Today, I'm going to talk about it. I've played the beta now for a few days. I've looked into the game.
Okay, this is why I love Asmongold. Okay, you're about to hear why. He says, I've been playing the beta for a few days. He's about to explain what that means to him. If I tell you I've been playing a game for a few days, I mean maybe I put like 5-6 hours in. Okay? That's not what he means.
I've gotten 2 characters to the max level, and I've no-lifed at least one of them to where they have pretty much full legendary gear that's almost completely upgraded too. So I wanted to give my thoughts on, in general, the first impressions of the game and just talk about Diablo 4. Now, for anybody who doesn't know, I used to be a huge fan of Diablo 3.
Bear in mind, he's filming this in his like childhood treehouse, which I find adorable.
I was like the guy, like I bought the game by, actually that's not true, I signed my dad up for the WoW annual pass that actually caused a problem with him changing his credit card that he got really mad at me for, and the annual pass included Diablo 3. So that's how I actually got Diablo 3. But anyway, so I got Diablo 3, I played it all night long, and I got to 60, I killed Inferno Diablo, I even killed Hardcore Inferno Diablo, way after Caparian, by the way. It's not as impressive as you'd think. But anyway, I did all that stuff, I got the Paragon 100, I absolutely loved Diablo 3. I had so much fun playing the game. And then Reaper of Souls came out, and I actually had a lot less fun. And so I moved away. I stopped playing Diablo 3 for a very long period of time, played a lot of Path of Exile, did a couple of other ARPGs, learned the error of my ways, went back to Path of Exile, and now I'm playing Diablo 4. So where does the game rank compared to other ARPGs? Is it as complex as Path of Exile? I think the answer to that is no, and I think that is an intentional no. I don't think that it should be as complex as as Path of Exile. Diablo 4 is in general a much more simplified version of PoE. Like, for example, whenever you were playing a Necromancer in PoE, if you want to change from carrion golems to skeletons, you've got to completely, reorient 17 different skill gems, 3 different talent choices, your ascendancy, and then also your enchants on your gear, and then like your corruptions and like all kinds of other stuff, right? But with Diablo, there's a button that says, I thought that was a wasp, but it was just one of those stupid things. And there's a button that says, like zombies or skeletons, and you just go click, and it's done. So how?
And this, I think this is important. Like people will hate on games for being like streamlined, and I think it's totally fine. I not every game has to be the crazy try hard monstrosity hyper complex. If you don't buy 3 books and spend hours on Reddit, you don't stand a chance type of game. Like, and the best games, I would say, are the ones that can accommodate both. Don't get me wrong. Like, one of the things I love about FromSoft games like Elden Ring is that if you want to just play it, you can do that and you'll have a good time. But if you want to do the try hard min max craziness, you can do that too and also have a really good time. And even other games, like I brought up Monster Hunter World as an example. Monster Hunter World, I mean, if you want to just play through the game, kill the monsters and move on, you can do that. But if you want to min-max as well, build out all of the best equipment, go into the end game, get all the gems and everything. If you want to do that, you can do that too and have a great time. So the best games, the best action RPGs in the world are the ones that can accommodate both players. And I think right now the question, especially for somebody like Asmongold, is whether or not it can accommodate the group that wants to chase the end game stuff, that wants to grind out the crazy legendary gear. And that, I mean, basically accommodate multiple 1,000-hour playthroughs, or multiple playthroughs that add up to thousands of hours. Because it seems pretty clear that Diablo 4 is doing a really good job of appealing to new players like myself, but the question is whether or not it can appeal to those more hardcore players who are more established in this type of game. So
much longevity is that going to have? I don't know. I think that's one of my biggest concerns with Diablo 4, really, is that the game has like a surprising amount of simplicity to it. And I do understand the silliness in saying that to an extent, because the beta only goes up to level 25. However, I've played Diablo 3 before, many times, thousands of hours, and I don't really see a lot of complexity in that game either. I don't really see a whole lot of new systems happening in Diablo 4 that's going to be transformative to that in a way that's different for players. Like, I think that you're obviously going to have people that are, they're going to play it and theory craft it, etc. But like, how deep does that theory crafting go? And I think there's a very interesting middle ground that I'm not sure if Diablo 4 is going to be able to really capitalize on, which is the middle ground that it is complex enough for it to be fulfilling for people to overcome the complexities, but simultaneously not as complex as PoE, to the point where it is just completely impenetrable for a new person. Any new person coming into Path of Exile, I tell them, follow your build guide down to a T, deviate a couple of times, realize the error of your ways, then go back to the build guide, because it's just so complex and so hard to understand. So Diablo 4...
Yeah, and that for me, I mean, it's like the acquired taste thing. I don't know. Let me know in chat right now. If you're in chat right now, let me know if I'm crazy about this. I hear something like that. Oh, you want to play PoE? Okay, well, here's a build guide. Follow it to a T. Otherwise, you're not going to have fun because you'll get curb stomped. That to me doesn't sound like super fun. Like, part of the fun of action RPGs to me is the experimentation and building it yourself. And it's also what I find so funny about the tryhards who are like, oh, you looked up, like Elden Ring tryhards did this. They were saying if you looked up guides for where to find bosses, then you were basically cheating. But then they're also looking at build guides for like min-maxing character builds. So it's like, I thought this was about experimentation, For me, it just doesn't do it for me. For me, it's an active like detriment to a game to hear that the game is so complicated. I basically need a dictionary-sized book that I have to sift through to build my character in the right way. Like, even something that's very complicated, like I've mentioned, I've talked about this a lot recently because I've been playing it and having a really good time. Kerbal Space Program. Kerbal Space Program, I've been having a ton of fun with. And Kerbal Space Program is literally rocket science, okay? It's extremely complicated. It's actual rocket science. And even that game, if you want to look up guides and figure out, okay, how do I get to the basically the equivalent of Pluto? How do I get out there? And you can figure it out. But it's actually really, really, really fun to go through and figure it out yourself. And the game encourages you to do that and gives you the tools to figure it out yourself. And that takes a really complicated thing and makes it accessible. And I think that that is the sign of a really good video game. Instead of just like an action simulator that's just madness, it's a game that actually encourages you to do the work and to figure it out. That's what I think. By the way, I've gotten pretty good at Kerbal, okay? Gotten pretty good at Kerbal. Kerbal Space Program 2, I think with the hydrogen thrusters, I think it's a little bit cheesy. My controversial take, just because hydrogen engines are like kind of not entirely theoretical, but like they're very unrealistic in the way that they're designed in the game. And so players using them to just like get to the outer realm, to me, it's a little cheesy.
Rari2XX super chatted $4.99.
Thank you, Rari.
I like single-player games with great stories. Examples such as Yakuza, Fist of the North Star, DBZ Kakarot, Frontiers, etc. What are your favorites?
I tend to like recently and in the last few years, my favorite narrative games have been the third-person action adventure games. I'm a very Western player in that sense. I don't have a problem with like the Japanese games, but my bread and butter has been those Western action adventure games, and so I'd say that's where most of my time has been committed to. And it's also because, let's just be real, a lot of the YouTube channel has been built around those videos, and so me playing those was something I needed to do for the channel, so that's what I had time. I could make time to do that. Whereas I probably couldn't justify spending a lot of time doing something like playing Yakuza or something where the video would not do very well. So that's part of it. It's kind of like a cycle that just predicts itself and reinforces itself. I probably would really like those games, but they wouldn't do well on the channel, so I haven't spent the time doing it. Because I haven't spent the time doing it, I haven't really built it out, so the videos won't do well. So it just, spins on itself. I like Final Fantasy VII Remake. Did that, but I haven't played any of the other Final Fantasy games. I'm interested in 16. 16 seems really interesting, but 14 as an MMO, I tried it for like an afternoon with one of my college roommates, and it just wasn't really for me. 15 looked fine, but not like good enough to get me to actually go out and like buy it and stuff. And all that said, though, 16 looks really, really good. That's my opinion. Do I like Resident Evil? Oh yeah. I'm not like a hardcore fanboy. People are like freaking out about Resident Evil 4, and I'm like, yeah, I mean, it looks fine. I played the chainsaw demo. People made fun of me because I didn't do the headshot spin kick thing. Whatever. I thought it was fine. But like, to me, it gets no brownie points for nostalgia because I didn't play it back in the day. So for me, it's basically just another game, right? Let's see what else he says.
I think that really has to hit that sweet spot in between boring levels of just repetitive gameplay that's mindless and effortless with no real investment put into it, and then also not simultaneously be too complex to where people don't understand it, like PoE. And I do think that complexity is not necessarily always a good thing. There's a lot of people online that, well, the more complex game and the harder game is always the better game. Not necessarily. And I want to draw a correlation, and it's an ironic correlation, but I think it's very true, between two old games, Diablo 2 and Gauntlet. How many of you guys played Gauntlet Legends? You played Gauntlet over on the old arcade machine, Red Wizard shot the food. That was me, by the way. And, you just kind of did all that kind of stuff. You love Gauntlet. You played maybe Gauntlet. You played, Diablo 2. I didn't play Diablo 2. And Gauntlet was a great game. In my mind, I think that Diablo 4 should be Gauntlet, and Path of Exile can be D2. There's nothing wrong with being a simpler, easier to understand, more accessible version of a type of game. And I really hope that's what Diablo 4 can do. And I would say, like, if I had to rate the game, I think people always want me to, rate the game. Is it a 5? Is it a 7? Is it a 10? I would rate Diablo 4, the beta experience, I would rate it probably like an 8.5. I don't really feel comfortable saying 9. I don't feel comfortable saying 8 either, so I'm feeling somewhere around 8.5. I don't think it's incredible. It's not changing my life. It's not innovative to the point to where it completely, reorients my thinking on the ARPG genre. However, it's very good at doing what it does. And I think that that's what I want to talk about next, is that the actual gameplay, the combat, the questing, etc. I think the idea of having the less, Blizzard is known all the time for their cinematics, especially back in the day whenever they were just head and shoulders above everybody else. A lot of other brands have caught up nowadays, but back in the day, Blizzard cinematics were the fucking gold standard. Anyway, so a lot of the Diablo 4 cinematics are not that amazing. They're not that great. But what they are is that they do show your character in the cutscene in a way that is actually pretty fucking good. And I like that. It sounds stupid, but I think I do. And that higher quality of cutscene, I hope they have a couple of them, of course, but it's not necessary for every single end of the act or anything like that. And I've actually really enjoyed just going through the game and seeing more cutscenes, even though they're a little bit lower quality. And I think the overall story of the game, this is, again, Act 1 story. I really liked the story until you got into, the main town and you started doing stuff. I like the idea of being that lone, grungy adventurer that smells like fucking, horse shit, well, literally in this case, and, you're in this village, and then they try to kill you and sacrifice you to a demon, and then you kill them. And I felt like that it scaled up quite quickly in terms of the, the complexities of the game and the scale of the game in terms of the narrative. And I did not really prefer that as much. If I had to say, I'd say that I like the story in Act 1 Diablo 3 more than I like the story in Act 1 Diablo 4. But I think that both of them are fine. They're passable. They still fit that, that notch of, it's kind of like this, it's like Pulp Fiction type stuff where it's not this super complex, very, hard to understand characters. No, not really. It's just these are the bad guys, these are the good guys, and they're demons, and, there's a few plot twists, but that's about it. I think that's what Diablo is supposed to be. It's not full of nuances like Game of Thrones or something, and I think that's a good thing. Anyway, so the combat. Story is good. Voice acting, incredible. Great job with voice acting. All of the kind of if you were to think of, old Game Informer or Nintendo Power Reviews where it says graphics, voice acting, story, all of those numbers, I think for Diablo would be a 10, pretty much, at least a 9. Diablo 4, absolutely. I think they're very well put together.
You guys remember those magazines? I used to go into GameStop and just buy the magazine. The Game Informer magazine. That's all I would buy. It was I forget how much it was, maybe $5 or something. I think they threw it in for free if you bought a game worth $10 or more or something like that. But yeah, those magazines, dude, those used to be the coolest thing. You'd lose hours just sifting through it slowly. And now everything in the magazine you can get on the website. It's like, why even have the physical copy? Which is kind of dumb, because I think having the physical collector thing of having the actual physical copy is super cool. But
So combat, let's talk a little bit about combat. I think combat is good. Combat is always something that Diablo 3 was great at, and I think that it was pretty decent in Diablo Immortal whenever you weren't lagging through things. So I expected combat to be good, and I was proven right. I'm very happy about the combat. I think it's fun, and it's pretty enjoyable overall. The itemization, and actually, before we talk about itemization, let's talk about bosses. I'm going to be real. So I played a Barbarian, the first character, and I understand people tell me, oh, well, if you play another version of the Barbarian, it's going to be super fun, like, you're just playing a bad build. Yeah, maybe, but, like, bro, I'm going to keep it real. Like, it's not fun chasing mobs that are programmed to run away from you the whole time. It's just not. Like, am I a bad barbarian? Am I a fake barbarian? Maybe I am. I played an Archon Wizard in Diablo 3, so, and after I played Sorcerer, I'm probably going to play a Sorcerer whenever the game comes out. And, maybe that's just, that's a me situation, but I really didn't like how annoying a lot of the fights were as melee. And I felt like, you're fighting a mob and he's standing inside of a pool that you're supposed to move out of. It's just annoying and like obnoxious to play against. But I mean, again, that could just be a me problem. I'm not sure. But as a melee player who then played ranged after that, I certainly enjoyed ranged a lot more. And at the end of the day, right or wrong, I had more fun as ranged. So anyway, combat I think was great. Bosses were really kind of hit or miss. I think that, again, this is Act 1. So like
I always am fascinated by Asmund. Just everything about him is just, he's an enigma. He's an enigma. Because like, he lives in a pretty normal neighborhood. He doesn't live in a crazy mansion like, Hassan or anybody. He lives in a nice house that he's been in forever. And he's like 30 years old. And he doesn't, from the neighbor's perspective, he doesn't go outside doesn't go outside the house very often. He's inside. He doesn't go to work. Like, I always wonder if they know like who he is. Do they know that he is Asmongold? Do they know that he streams to like 100,000 people daily? Do they know that this guy is a celebrity and is worth enough that he could buy the entire neighborhood? Like, do they know? Or do they just think he's the really weird guy with long hair who sits in his childhood treehouse like while talking about video games he likes, probably filming on like a fine camera, but not like a crazy fancy camera? Like, do they just think he's like kind of the weirdo of the neighborhood, not realizing that he's actually like super, super successful? My dad always thinks I watch some homeless guy on YouTube whenever I have him on the TV. I will say he's looking good though. He trimmed his beard. He's got it pulled back, the hair pulled back. He's looking good. I'll give it to him.
Expecting some, like massive, insane level of complexity with bosses. Like I'm not expecting, Vault in Gate 2. I'm not expecting Uber Elder. So guess what? The bosses are pretty simple. They're relatively well put together, and I think that they were fine. Going and doing the side quests and the open world nature of the game. Sorry about the plane. The open world nature of the game, I actually think flowed really well, and I enjoyed it a lot. The only concern that I have with the open world nature of the game is that there's a lot of like collection type stuff. For example, you have to get a bunch of different like waypoints. Think about like the Lost Ark Adventurer's Journal. If you played that game, and there's like a list of like little chores that you have to do around the world. Click all the statues, open up all the portals, do all the side quests. I will love to do that one time. But if I have to do that every fucking season, I'm going to lose my mind, and I can guarantee you that at a certain point, it will be one of the biggest reasons why I don't play a new Diablo 4 season. I don't find it to be fun to repeat the same clicking on the same statues, or even if they randomize their locations, I still don't find it fun. It's fucking boring. It's something to do whenever the game's new and you just want to explore the game, but after you've done that a couple of times, you've kind of, that has worn off its excitement. So I do hope that
I totally agree. I mean, there's a fine line between like walking the tightrope of grind for the sake of grind, and then also the tightrope of like having lots of content that's not repetitive. Like for this, one of the reasons I think grind in games has a really bad reputation is because when people hear grind, they usually think, okay, so you're grinding repetitive, boring stuff to reach some end. And that doesn't have to be the case. It certainly is the case a lot of the time, like with a lot of really poorly put together games that have a heavy grind. But it doesn't have to be the case. Like some games, they might have a grind where you perhaps have to reach a certain level before you can take on the final mission. Like The Witcher kind of does this, where you have to reach this level maybe like 24 before you can take on this final quest. And in order to do that, at that point, when you reach that greeting point, it's like, okay, you're only level 19. You have 5 levels to gain before you can move on in the story. Go do side stuff. That's technically grind, because you're just grinding out this one specific activity to maximize XP to get to that level. And I wouldn't say that that's bad, because what you're grinding is quality content. So it's fine if something like Diablo 4 has a grind for quality content. The problem is when it's like, okay, now you grind, but it's just 17 randomized locations. Go find these things, and that's it, you know? Or like, you know, in Fallout 4, a settlement needs your help. You can grind that out. I think it's going to get pretty boring pretty quickly because it's just repetitive copy and pasted stuff, right? You kids don't even know what grind is. I got to max level in Ion Online. Now that's grind. Yeah, boring grinding must be talking about the original Pokemon games. Well, yeah, games that rely purely on nothing but RNG usually have what I personally would consider to be bad grind, because I get triggered by it. Luke, you don't know grind if you haven't played Destiny 2. Well, and that's why, like, for me, I liked grinding through, say, Monster Hunter World, because I was grinding and there was a quantifiable difference. Like, if I got my Odageron armor set figured out, the qualitative difference taking on the next boss was noticeable. I could tell, okay, this armor set is changing the game. So I'm okay with grinding for that, for fighting and killing a dozen of those things to get the, you know, for me, it was the plate. It was the Odageron plate that I couldn't get to drop ever. But eventually I got it. And when I got it, it was awesome. And you could tell the difference. It was like, okay, this was worth it. But like in the end game for those gems, I personally didn't really feel that big of a difference once I got the gems. So I just didn't feel the need to go grind those and min-max my character. Like for me, it just wasn't that quantifiable feeling. And I think that's the balancing act that these games have to figure out, where you need to have enough content that there's constantly upgrades being made and completed, but then you also have to, like, you also have to make each upgrade feel worth it so that you can continue the grind. You know? It's really, really tricky. It's not easy to do. Injustice 2 gear set grinds for the Hellbat armor and Staff of Grayson was the worst. Dude, I had a friend, Rayumbo, that max leveled all of the Injustice 2 characters. And I don't know how he did it, because I felt the grind after just trying to max level 1. I think I max leveled Swamp Thing or Swamp Creature, whatever it is. And that was a lot for me. So I was like, every single character. No, not Caleb. This was Braden from high school. I haven't talked to Braden in a while. But Caleb, it does seem like a game Caleb would get into. But he hasn't really gotten into fighting games a lot. So, yeah. What's the door tag say? It just says I'm filming or recording in progress is what it says. Recording in progress. I am supposed to put that on the other side of the door whenever I'm recording so that people know not to knock on the door or anything.
Change that, and they don't make you repeat activities like that so much. And now that we're talking about seasons, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about itemization and how complex those items are going to be. So it seems like with Diablo 4, what they're going to be doing is they're going to be doing a combination of having rares that are, you know, like 5 affix rares, and then you can put legendary powers onto them. It seems like that will probably be the meta, unless the legendary power is like extremely powerful in terms of like a binary functionality. Then you'd probably want to have the solid legendary, because transferring the powers, I think, makes them weaker in some cases. But anyway, the itemization, I think, is okay, but I don't really find it to be particularly interesting. And maybe this is just me, but a lot of the different bonuses that I got, I never really got this bonus and was like, wow, this is fucking amazing. I'm doing so much more damage. I just was like, okay, cool. Now I have this and my abilities do more damage. And I think, again, this is very much probably an issue of the beta, but I do remember back in Diablo 3, and I think a lot of you guys who have played Path of Exile or even WoW remember how good it feels to get like that fucking Omega Bis item, or like to get something that's just build defining. You go from, you know, like being able to just be able to do it to being able to do it without even looking at the screen, or being able to not even have a chance to being able to do it easily.
That, there's nothing like that in a game. I bet a lot of you guys probably have a moment like this in a game that you can think of, where you got that thing and it just changed the whole game. You're like, oh man, this is different. Like for some people, like maybe for one, it could be like in Elden Ring, you get the Sword of Night and Flame at launch before they nerfed it. Like for you, that's like, okay, boom, I found this weapon in a weird corner of a collapsed building. while I was randomly exploring, and now this is going to be my build. And you rework the whole thing for it. And that shot of dopamine was awesome. Or in, like for me, I remember the time, like I just mentioned, the Odageron plate that I needed to finish the suit that I was building. Once I got that plate, I remember exactly like the screenshot in my mind of that moment when I got the drop. Oh man, I felt like $1,000,000. And that, oh man, that hits different. And that's the dopamine rush that you start chasing for the rest of the game. And oh man, yeah. No, and he's right. I think that the lack of items like that is probably a beta thing. I would assume that there's got to be stuff like that in the game, but it's just not in the beta.
And I remember in Diablo 3, like I would get like a ring or a pair of gloves. I think gloves are like one of the best ones that would have like, you know, my main damage stat, critical strike damage, critical strike chance, and attack speed all on my fucking gloves. And it's like, oh my god, I am a god now. And I could feel my character play better. And I hope that Diablo 4 gives you that ability to do it, because I think that's one of the best things about ARPGs, is to feel your character getting more powerful and to feel those cool things that you're able to get. And I just really hope Diablo 4 is able to capture that in the context of it being a much more simplistic game. And you're getting so many uniques as like a level 25. I don't know if this is increased for the beta or not. I worry that you're going to be playing the game, and within the first 10% of like the first day or two of playing the game, you will have obtained like 80 to 90% of the functionality of your build. And then after that, you're just searching for upgrades for that build. And I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. I could see that being kind of, it's like a one and done type situation. You play the game for a few days each season and then that's it. But I can't really see myself coming back and playing future seasons if the itemization isn't a little bit more complex and I don't have a little bit more agency over controlling it. You're able to do a few things with the items, but I don't know if it's going to be enough, especially in season 5 of Diablo 4 or season 11 of Diablo 4. I don't really see myself coming back and enjoying that same type of itemization and build control. I just feel like it would be it's very much on rails. I like playing games where I can effectively play a character and make it so OP that it feels like I'm doing something that I shouldn't be able to. And
Totes agree. It's actually one of the reasons I go back and I play like Stick of Truth. I know that's a really weird one to bring up, but the Stick of Truth, I remember playing that game for the first time, and I decided to try it. I just, we'll do it. And then I didn't look up guides. I didn't do anything. I just played the game, and I figured out how to build a bleed build that was so broken I could 1 or 2 shot the final boss. Like hardest difficulty, everything, 1 to 2 shot the final boss, depending on how the rolls went. And I go back now and I still play the Stick of Truth just to get that feeling again of just totally breaking a game. And it's awesome. And the game lets you do it because you figured it out. It doesn't nerf it. It was one of my frustrations, honestly, with like Elden Ring, is they released the game, and then for 6 months after launch, they kept patching things and balancing it and then nerfing this weapon and then unnerfing that one. And it just made it so it felt like anytime you had that dopamine rush of, I solved this, I figured it out, I broke the game, I can ruffle stomp on these bosses, it's awesome, they would nerf it and then it's gone, and that for me kind of, I don't know, it left a bad taste in my mouth with Elden Ring, if I'm being real. I think honestly playing the game now after launch would probably feel markedly different, I would guess.
I don't know if Diablo 4 is going to give you enough tools to be able to do that. So that's in general the way that I feel about the itemization. It's not amazing, it's not awful, but it is what it is, I guess. So next thing is going to be, like, again, I'll talk a little bit more about the open world content and the MMO nature of the game.
Oh, Sword of Night and Flame was totally broken. I totally agree. But like Comet Azure, after a couple patches, I think was balanced well enough that the slow build up, I think that thing still being nerfed into oblivion was probably an overreaction. There was the what was the sword? The bloodletting sword, the one that just would make the bosses gush blood if they had a weakness to it. Oh, I can't remember. Rivers of Blood? Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, Rivers of Blood. That was one they also nerfed, but that one also, let's be real, that thing was just fun to use. And like, I think it's okay if you have a weapon that's really powerful. Make it kind of tough to like maybe upgrade, maybe it's a little extra expensive or something. Increase the wind-up time, maybe decrease the crit chance, things like that. But I mean, those blood builds are just freaking fun, dude.
I heard from a number of people that Diablo 4 really felt like much more of an MMO than an ARPG. And I think that, I mean, as somebody who's an MMO player, I think this is great. I'm very happy about this. And I went through and I played Diablo 4. I interacted with other players. It was seamless. They were never annoying. They never made my experience worse. And overall, I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was great. And I like the idea of going into town and seeing other players. And, you know, I hate to say it, but Diablo Immortal did this too. And the truth is that it was really fun in Diablo Immortal too. So I'm really glad to see them add that same functionality into Diablo 4 and make the game feel a little bit more open and allow you to interact with other people. You can, I think, inspect them, look at their gear, which is, I think, super important in the RPG. And I think overall, the open world aspects of the game, the world boss and everything, I think it's really cool, and I like it a lot. I can see how some people that were purists of the game wouldn't have the same opinion, but for me, I think it's fucking great. So anyway, that's some of the main feelings that I have about Diablo 4. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I really want to go through. Obviously, you know, like a lot of intangibles, things like graphics, things like the menus, etc. I think all that stuff is fine. There's nothing really bad about it. It's good. It's definitely passable. There are a lot of people that have been negative about Diablo 4 because, you know, it doesn't make them feel the same way that Diablo 3 or Diablo 2 did. I think that in a lot of cases, that's probably a product of its time, and I'm not necessarily sure that you can have any game that'll make you feel that way again. But if you do find one, please let me know too, because I'd love to have that feeling again. Diablo 4 didn't really do that for me either, which is why it's not some sort of like a 10. Again, this is not Elden Ring, okay? It's not the, you know, greatest level of innovation in ARPGs since Path of Exile. But it's a good, solid game. It seems fun, and it seems like Diablo isn't really trying to compete as much with Path of Exile. They're trying to broaden the scope of what the ARPG genre is and appeal to a more casual gamer and a person that wants to be able to go into the game, understand it, and play it without using a bunch of different spreadsheets and looking things up online, at least too much, until they get to the Paragon board, that is. So overall, my feelings on the game are overwhelmingly positive. I'm very happy about it. I think that I'm reserving judgment for a lot of different things like in-game systems, etc. But my main concern with the end game is actually very similar to my concern with the itemization, which is why would I want to play Diablo 4 Season 6 just to go and run the same dungeons again and again and again? Because Path of Exile has such a great tiering of their progression content. You know, you've got maps, you've got you've got the boss maps, you've got other bosses, you've got Shaper, Elder, Uber Elder, Sirius, the Conquerors, the Elder Guardians, the Shaper Guardians, and there's the Exarch and the Eater of Worlds, and there's all these different benchmarks, Cortex. There's all these benchmarks the player can put themselves up against and then try to overcome this challenge. And I'm very concerned that Diablo 4 won't have that, and the end game won't feel as fulfilling as the Path of Exile end game does. That's my biggest actual concern with the game, is that the Diablo 3 end game, I played a few seasons in Diablo 3, even Reaper of Souls. It's fucking boring. All you do is run rifts. That's it. It's like, imagine in PoE, if the only thing that you could do is run tier... Well, you could just run infinitely tiered maps. So, instead of running a tier 15 or tier 16 map, you're running a tier 27 map. And if you get hit once, you're dead, but you can kill everything in 2 hits because you're built completely for damage. That's basically the way that Diablo 3 rifts work. I mean, not exactly, but you can see kind of what I mean. Think about, there's no other activities. There's nothing else to do. All you do is you just run rifts, and that's it. I find that to be so boring. And that's my biggest concern with Diablo 4, is that the end game will just simply be boring. It will be repetitive, not fun, not innovative. There won't be benchmark bosses, there won't be capstone challenges, and I really hope that doesn't happen, because I really want to enjoy the game. I've had a lot of fun playing the beta. I'm probably going to go play it right now. But the truth is that level 25 beta doesn't really give you a lot of insight into the end game, and with a game like Diablo, you're going to be through this type of content in 2 or 3 days. So unless you only expect people to play the game 2 or 3 days, what do you do after that? Well,
2-3 days if you're playing for 12 hours a day, yes. For me, I mean, granted, if you are playing for a couple of hours a night when you get back from work, then, I mean, it's going to last you a few weeks probably. But I think his points are generally, pretty accurate. You can't say that he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, he knows these games backwards and forwards. One of these comments, top comment, Asmongold is the only streamer that can talk about computer games while sitting in a treehouse, and everything will completely make sense. Yep, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, and the thing that kind of stood out to me was his point of people not liking the game or having negative feelings towards the game because it doesn't give them the same feeling Diablo 3 did. And this is something a lot of people do with sequels and stuff, is they're like, it doesn't feel as magic. I remember playing the game, I remember it's going to happen, mark my words, for Elder Scrolls 6. People are going to play that and be like, it doesn't feel as magical as Skyrim. Yeah, because you were a child when Skyrim came out, and now you freaking are an old person like me, and now it's not as magical. Yeah. But guess what? For some people, it will be magical. For some people, Diablo 4 is going to be their Diablo 3. For some people, it's going to be the game that they look back on and they're like, oh man, you remember Diablo 4 when that came out? It was amazing. I was 20. Oh, I'm sorry. Favorites. Favorites is really old. We're just old. Well, okay, hold on. Well, no, what is it? Defeater Eater. I hear you, Luke, but I've played Kingdom Hearts 3 as well as the first 2 games very recently, and the third game, it just ain't as magical, man. Yeah, I would agree. Kingdom Hearts 3 sucks. Even, and I'm saying that as somebody who's not a Kingdom Hearts person, but my 2 roommates that were still in the house, the college house, when Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, Michael and Corey, they were diehard Kingdom Hearts fans. They convinced me to buy the game and to play it. They played through it all when it came out within like a day and a half. And they all are like, yeah, no, it kind of sucked. They're like, we were hoping this would be the finale, and then it just kind of like fell flat. So sometimes the game does just suck. But if the game is really good and it's just not as magical for you, that's okay. Sometimes it's just not as magical. It happens. He took my thing.